Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. It is another episode of League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys for a deep dive into what is messy in a good way, LEC. Very early season with the schedule kind of all over the place. But so far, more questions than answers very early on in Europe's spring split.
A lot of those questions coming through in this past week as we got through and getting the games for G2 back in action after first stand, getting everybody involved in the mix for it. And yeah, the way things have played out, got some questions about the LEC. Certainly gotten a couple of answers, which is some exciting things to talk about. Let's dive right into it.
The main question, I think, on people's tip of the tongue, or at least us, is Vitality the best team in Europe right now? And I'm sitting there looking at the games, what we've got so far. Again, you can only play against the teams that are on the schedule. KC's only played 3 games, not much to go on. G2, only 2 series. But right now, I think Vitality is the best team. It's not clean. It's not calm, cool, collected a lot of the time. But 3-1, they've beaten Na'Vi, MCoy, stomped Heretics, and again, we remind you, they were one bad comms call away from 2-0ing KC and being 4-0 with probably the toughest schedule on the docket so far.
I think the thing that you find for this Vitality team and the answer to that question is that this power level is for real. What they are capable of, the potential of this Vitality team when everything goes right, when they are playing well, even if, the draft isn't so great, the execution can be there. The players are doing it for this Vitality squad. Now, can they do it every single day, every single week remaining until MSI? That is something I think you have less of confidence in when you're talking about a squad like Vitality. So yes, you're taking care of business early, very good, all the things that you want to do. Are you going to see this success continue? And that's going to be where people will differ about Vitality. But the thing that I can offer is flat out, again, that high level, that ultimate version that you can push for and is going to challenge other teams in the region. That Vitality will show up more times than not. This split is my early indication.
And listen, everybody's talking about Knock as they should be. This guy has been a solo kill demon and just an absolute lane god. The amount of pressure this guy gets early in the laning phase from the opposing jungler, and then the amount of pressure he puts on the opposing, usually backline, even when he's on tank duty during these team fights, he has been absolutely elite. And how about Linsis? He's already gone toe-to-toe with Yike and Elyoya, 2 of the premier guys in the LEC, and more than held his own. This is a guy who we were wondering, should he even be starting in the LEC? But now here he is going toe-to-toe with the best of the best.
I like that you bring up Knock first, because that's certainly one of those ones where him as an individual player seems to be that X factor that has taken this Vitality team out of kind of just being, maybe they'll mess around, fuddle around in the middle tier of or lower in the LEC. He's given them that angle to push and envision being in the top spot and how they can play. And combining that with, as you said, and what he has done in the jungle and how he has been able to perform, and specifically for me in that Movistar Koi series, he was that difference maker, really making sure in that game 3 on that Aatrox that it was going to be the win for Vitality.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen him do it on some of these more carry picks like the Aatrox, or step back and been the supportive guy to enable other guys. Humanoid is still kind of the big question mark on this team, and we have seen shades of Humanoid dominating, but there's, still the fluctuating performances out of him that has been there his whole career and probably will stay there his whole career. But the vibes are immaculate for this team, and they remain one of, if not the most exciting and interesting team in Europe to watch.
That, I think, is more than anything, flat out, it is just a content machine of a team, and not the content machine in the same way that we had Los Ratones this split before. This is just, again, whatever's going on. The entertainment value is there with a squad like Vitality, and as well, they're backing it up with the results out there on Summoner's Rift.
When we pull up the bigger board, all the teams in the LEC, I think the main reason you're talking about putting Vitality in that number 1 spot is of course, because of the result of that Fnatic G2 series where stomped from G2 in game one, and then they fall apart in the next two games. And obviously a short body of work for G2. We're still primarily looking at Spring, taking less of that first stand stuff into this. So that's one reason why Vitality is here. But that messy, chaotic playstyle you heard Caps talk about in an interview is why they lost to Fnatic, or one of the reasons, and why they struggled against BLG in those first stand finals when it's a little slower paced LCK style, and he said they have time to make their decisions, feel out their game plan. That's when they're at their best. But the LPL, Fnatic, and probably Vitality too, when they're just fighting you constantly, you don't get that opportunity.
Which is kind of crazy, because at some point in the last 5 years, that had been the shift. And again, I bring up 5 years because, well, Caps has been there that entire time with G2. Yeah. And when you look at it, previously, that's how they used to like to play, how they would fight and how they would get those advantages. So a little comment kind of more so on G2 and the evolution and the change and growth of a player like Caps and the style that they want to play. And then recognizing where you come up short in regards to facing off against that type of style and what it brings out and how it changes the aspects and decision making within a game. I think that is a good recognition from Caps in G2. Now you need to find a way to solve it out there on Summoner's Rift, and I think that is going to be the challenge here in the next little bit. And I think, again, identifying it like this is kind of that double-edged sword of, one, yes, now you've got the clue and got the drop on what is something you want to work on and be better and stronger and more resilient to, but everybody else now has also figured out that this is probably an angle that we can use to pressure to put you in a situation that you are not as proficient or comfortable in navigating out of.
Vitality and Fnatic, the perfect teams to train that up for G2 for the next international event. But really, this whole top five in the LEC, not only is it seem like a close power level right now, but anybody could beat anybody on given day when you go down to Movistar Koi. Even at 1 and 2, you know, they've lost to Vitality and Na'Vi, who are right ahead of them. They completely stomped their win against Fnatic, even though Mirwin has been a little bit sus. Not really worried about Koi. KC's only played one single series. And by the way, I know there's these road events that KC and Koi are going to host, and it's kind of a marathon weekend where they'll play 3 series, and that's why this scheduling is so wacky. But as the weeks go on, Vitality will have played 7 series after this next week before KC has played 3. That is insane, man.
It's not the best way of handling it. And again, that's with the caveat and understanding that it is allowing us to have these additional or supplementary road shows and excursions put on by Movistar Koi, put on and looking at KC as well, right? These are the things where you're going to have these type of problems. And unfortunately, that's where you get a situation like that. And it's really going to be about, okay, well, on that Vitality side, yeah, how do you handle something like that where it will, again, swing the other direction and work its way out? Can you stay hot? Can you stay focused? Can you stay engaged? And then, of course, we know that pressure run for the rest of the top teams. It feels like a horse race, right, where everyone's jostling for position. They're figuring it out. But you got to get to that final stretch. You got to get to that final turn, and then you break out of the pack. And that's sort of how it feels, I think, in the LEC right now, where we're going to have this pack of horses, pack of teams, jumbling, positioning, and fighting for it all the way until we get to that final stretch, that last week, that final turn. And I think we will start to see the true, real winners separate themselves from the rest of the pack.
Yeah, it's a crazy front-loaded schedule for Vitality because G2 is next up on the schedule for them. And then, like, their final 3 series are Fnatic, GiantX, Shifters, SK, some combination there. So it's very much the hardest part of the schedule first. I don't know what teams would prefer if you want the easier ones heading into playoffs. Who knows? That's probably differing team to team. But if you look at the rest of this board, obviously the only undefeated team is GiantX. And you might be going, well, shouldn't you be highlighting them a little more? Shouldn't they be higher up? But their wins have been against Team Heretics, SK, and Fnatic, who look better now than they did against GiantX, but probably the easiest schedule for 3 games so far, which is why we're not exactly jumping up and down for them.
This is by no means anything against GiantX. This is just simply You look at their schedule, who you have beaten, and those teams are pulling you back down with them type of thing. It's not about you getting out in front. So that's, I think, the unfortunate reality for GiantX is that, yes, this has been 100% as good as it really ever could be to start out this split and split 2, but you need to do more. And that's the unfortunate reality when you are GiantX. You need to do more in this case. You need to impress, and you need to be getting it against teams with higher pedigree. That's going to be coming in the next week or two here. But at the very least, right now, you've gotten yourself in a good early position.
We're going to have to keep waiting because it's only shifters on the schedule next week for GiantX. But hey, they've been taking care of business, whatever has been thrown their way. And really, I don't have a ton of faith in these bottom 3. Any of them, Shifters, SK, or Heretics, kind of climbing out of that bottom 3. The SK experiments, crazy stat. Leader has the highest gold percentage share of any player in the league. He just hasn't done that much with it. Yeah.
I think this is a very unfortunate reality, but one that a lot of us envisioned, and certainly one that should have been very crystal clear after the first split, that this was not going to be the path that you could take in the next one. Yet everybody decided to stick on third for whatever type of reason. And unfortunately for you, the rest of the viewers, you're out there seeing this experiment completely falter and fail multiple times. And really, the only saving grace is that there are some other duds in the LEC, that they are not the only lone standout, that it is so egregious looking at them.
That bubble or transition point between those bottom 3 is absolutely Fnatic. And listen, I was ready to stick and fork in them if they were going to get 2-0'd by G2, fall to 0-3, like right this split off, they're cooked. They beat G2. Huge win for them. Much bigger than the loss for G2. And G2 was by no means at their best on the day, but that's still not enough for me to all of a sudden be confident in this Fnatic lineup even making playoffs.
No. And I think that should be one of the biggest lessons that we are learning this year, and one of the ones we've been, again, confronted with various iterations of this in the past and ignored it. I'm not ignoring it this time around. I don't see it for this Fnatic team. I think there absolutely is something with Vladdy and what he will develop and the potential that he can show and the type of player he can be. They're going to have to survive this year, this split with Fnatic, because again, I just don't see it in enough avenues, in enough areas of the game where they'll be able to find a way to keep climbing up to be a real contender within the LEC and abroad.
Because the truth is, there's not really a gimme in the top 6. They're all pretty, at least solid, decent teams. So there's no going to run through them, and losing 2 series early on will probably harbor or damage them. But it's still at least some positives for the Fnatic faithful to cheer about, and maybe they can ride this momentum to some wins. But I think it's going to be a messy ride the whole way through over in Europe. We're still in the very early days of spring split action, but that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you, absolute stunners. Thanks for hanging out as always. You best believe we'll catch you on that flippity flip.